Alright, well, I'm back. We're married, and we have a TV antenna. So at least I have something I can do in the house. I'm not much on, in other words, there was not that much to do, but I'm not much on watching TV either. However, you know, if I'm at home, there's got to be something to do. And sex isn't that much of a driver for me. In fact, since I said that, I actually had to cut her back a little bit. She wanted it a lot more than I did. 2 times a week. I mean, at first, more than that seemed good, but, you know, it became too routine. It's not I didn't enjoy it. It was too much of a routine. So I kind of tried to limit it to 2 times a week. I mean, I wanted to too, but I guess it's hard to explain, but the excitement isn't there if you're doing it every night, as if you were doing it if you haven't seen each other for a while. What's that term? I can't think of it. So anyway, I'm going to do some griping here, but I mean, this is the way life is for me anyway, and it's a perfect title for this to be Why Me. I don't know exactly why these things happen. First thing to talk about is our wedding bands. I said I didn't get her an engagement ring. I couldn't afford it. Didn't even think about it, really, because of financial situation. Between her and her parents, they paid for everything on the wedding, except for her wedding dress and my suit. And maybe my parents put some money in, I don't know, but I don't think they did. We get, I want to say that we get our wedding bands, and mine, I believe, is too tight. She's telling me, no, it's perfect, and I convince them to loosen it up just a little. So this becomes another issue later on. Well, I'll just go ahead and put these two stories together. So earlier I told you that we got no pictures from our wedding. Well, we didn't find out we didn't have any pictures for, I believe it was 1.5 years, because the guy didn't want to tell us that there were no pictures. I never heard why. I'm assuming he had to known, but he, as far as I know, never said. He apologized, but that's doesn't do any good. So there is literally not one picture left at this point, unless, you know, unless that Polaroid's still sitting around somewhere. I don't know. And of course, then I look at that now as an omen. The second day, you know, the day after the wedding, the fact that I spent the time to put up a antenna in the rain, and as with all the trouble we had, kind of tells you there's something wrong. And then it wasn't 6 months and I lost my wedding ring, and I never replaced it. Was married for 21 years and only had the band on for 6 months. Can't say that it did me any good as far as getting offers from women or anything like that, although a couple times maybe somebody did approach me that wouldn't have. I don't know. So now we're in this duplex, and of course, when the other people moved out, felt like it needed to be fixed up a little bit. There were metal cabinets in the kitchen, so I took all them down, took them down to my machine shop, sanded them down, painted them, painted some of them in place up there in the house. We tore some walls out and redid them. I can't remember all. Insulated the place. It only had a single heating register right in I'm gonna say right in front of the TV set. There's a lot of some funny stories about that register because that's where all the heat came from, and so it was pretty hot if you sat on it while it was running. But anyway, we get our side fixed up to what I think is okay, and then let's get back here. And then when my brother-in-law and sister get married, they move into the other half. Now, when they move in, they end up putting in, I believe, the tower to mount the antennas on instead of the pole. They get all brand new cabinets. They don't get theirs painted like we did. And there was a few other things done to the house. And in my opinion, the way it was kind of like they insisted on it. I always wondered why they got more than we did. You know, they never offered to come back over on our side and upgrade. Of course, once we moved out, like 13 years later, then they upgraded it, you know, but not while we were there. There was something else that went on over there that kind of bugged me, you know, that I didn't think. I just wondered why we didn't get the same. Also, and I'm jumping around a little bit, but I said that we didn't get a honeymoon. We didn't have the money for it, and her family spent the money for the wedding for the most part. And of course, our side of the family should have had money. But years later, a farming acquaintance, his son was going to get married. Now this farming family, all the children, the two boys still lived on the farm. And the younger one, which for some reason I'm going to say my father always complained about, as if he was, you know, as if there was something wrong with this guy and he didn't like him. But he always was, but I'm saying he would always be complaining about the one boy. When it came time for him to get married, my father made the offer to come over there and do all his chores for him so that him and his wife-to-be could go on a honeymoon. And then he gave them money to go on the honeymoon. And he told them that everybody, you know, that gets married should have a chance to go. Well, what about your own son? I didn't get a honeymoon. He never made an offer. In fact, I know I took off on the Monday from work, but on Tuesday I went back to work. And she worked at a sewing factory, my wife, and she went back to work. And I can remember we actually had trouble making our payments even in the beginning. So I'm not sure how I should feel about something like that, but I can say that my father would do just about anything for anybody else much easier than he would do it for his own family. I will say too that my brother-in-law, if we wanted something from my father, we meaning my brother and myself, we would ask him to ask my father, because if he asked, it was a great idea. If Steve or me, my brother or me, asked, it wasn't any good at all. And my sister struggled with that as well, although I think she did have a little more influence with Pop, and especially with my mother. And why not? I mean, she was the daughter and she was the youngest, so she's going to have a little bit of leverage that we don't get. Of course, I'm the middle child, so I get the least. And my brother, although my father treated him pretty rough, he still benefited, it seemed like, more than me. And remember, I'm saying that it seemed like. You know, I would love to know how God looks at these kind of things. And, well, one thing he'd say is first off, it's none of your business what your brother got. Worry about yourself, you know. I know that. So, you know, these are things that are still in my mind, obviously, and things that I had to experience. And I think since I have time, I'm going to switch back to my job, where I'm making the credit card machines. Now, I'm doing a pretty good job. Well, actually, this is going to end up being right back where I started. My wife decides that it's time for her to quit taking birth control. She doesn't ask me, she just does. Now, I'm thinking this, and at this point I believe we've left the church we were at and we're now going to the one my mother goes to, which I stayed there for years. I mean, my children started there and they finished there, you might say. Frizzleburg Bible Church. And just a nice little church. Just good people. That's just all there was to it. And so I'm thinking, well, what are you supposed to do after you get married? Have children. Well, of course. Do you want children? I never even thought about it. Never. I had no thought in my mind about what it would be like to have children. Good, bad. I mean, I figured they'd be a lot of work, but that's about it. And I didn't think about that ahead of time. So she's off the pill, and okay, I guess that's the next thing on the list. You know, that's what God wants. And 9 months after we get married, she's pregnant. I had told, the company I was working for that I wanted to start my own business. And I thought after about it was coming up on a year there, that I was ready to go full time. Now, luckily, that's not quite how it happened. Here I am, I'm saying I'm ready to go full time in my shop, and now my wife is pregnant. And in fact, the people at Security Imprinter, they were even nice enough to throw me a baby shower. And so we got our carriage for our child to be and things like that from them, which was very nice of them. I actually did like the people there and got along pretty well with everybody that as far as I'm aware of. Once the 6 months of initiation, we'll call it, was done, I did pretty good there. So I tell them that I want to quit at a year, after a year. They convinced me to stay there for another 6 months at least, working part-time. Well, that kind of works out for me because that means I can transition, hopefully. And I don't remember if it was right then. No, it wasn't. That was later on. So I was going to talk about something else. So I agree to the work there for 6 months, half days. And I have my brother at the shop in the mornings, so I can actually technically be open all day long. This seems to be working pretty good. I don't know when I started the uniforms. That's something that's bugging me because I can remember giving my brother uniforms as well. Like I had a couple people, and I can't remember the sequence. So anyway, here I am starting a business, and my wife's pregnant, and it's like I'm not even thinking this is any kind of a deal. I mean, I need insurance and everything else. Of course, because of me working there, they said they would keep my insurance. So I worked there at least long enough for her to have the baby. And after that, I told them, all right, that's it. Time to go. Now, the dumb thing on the company's part is they never looked for anybody else to replace me. And I tried to tell them, you guys got to start looking. I'm going to be out, and that's it. Well, they did end up hiring somebody and didn't really have the qualifications for doing the prototype work. But whatever. I did what little training I needed to do with him, and I was out of there. And of course, I had my first child, my daughter. Wasn't any great excitement for me. It's no big deal. It ended up being a C-section, which I wonder about, but luckily I didn't have to watch it. And when they finally, actually she was like in labor for 24 hours, when they said that they were going to, as this doctor, at least he knew how to talk to me, he says it wouldn't come out through the garage door, so we're taking it out through the roof. Yeah, I liked him. He had an accent. He was from some foreign country, but anyway, she was born, and of course, because she came out through the roof, she wasn't all scrunched up and weird looking like some babies are when they're first born. I will say, though, that once we got her home, like if my sister or somebody came over, she was up there sleeping in her room, and I said, she looks a lot cuter when she's awake, you know? So I woke her up. She cried for a whole week after I did that. Yeah, I have to learn the hard way. But, you know, I tell you now that I've had my children, of course, and they're grown up. Not now, I mean, even right after she was born, I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm just saying, I never planned. I never thought about children, but God did, and He made sure that I had some. And I'm glad for that. You know, they are a blessing and an education. And you really need to have children if you want to mature. You really do. It's not a requirement, but it's important. Most of us are not going to have the maturity that we should have without them. All right, I think that's good enough. Thanks for listening.